Scripture this evening comes from the Old Testament book of Deuteronomy. The chapter is 30. We'll look at verses 11 through 14. Again, Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 11 through 14. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 11 through 14. We're talking on our series, Things That Steal Our Joy. Tonight, I want to see that one of those things that steals our joy is disobedience. Now, let's be honest, when we're disobedient, it doesn't mean that we don't have some pleasurable experience with disobedience. It doesn't mean that we don't like the sins that we indulge in. Therein is our struggle, is the fact that we do like the sins that we commit. If we're not honest about that, then we're not honest about a lot of things, because we do not struggle with sin because we just hate it. There is a pleasure component to sin. Now, as we look at Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 11 through 14, while you're turning there, I like to bring your attention to experiences that we have, or at least witness in the world around us. For example, we watch game shows where getting a prize can be dependent upon picking the right door. Remember, door number 1 or door number 2. Sometimes it's a sporting event where it comes down to a coin toss, and you just wonder, if the toss went another way, would it affect the outcome of the game? People talk about something good in their life, and we say, wow, they were just in the right place at the right time. You may be looking for a job, or have looked for a job before, where you get 2 offers, and do you go with company A or company B? And then you wonder, what would have happened had I gone with the other offer? In some regards, it seems that life has so much randomness in it. The reality of the matter is that the outcomes of our lives as it relates to the God that we serve is not random. It's about obedience versus disobedience and the subsequent outcomes. Let me illustrate this for you in Deuteronomy chapter 30, starting at verse number 11. For this commandment which I command thee this day, it is not hidden from thee, neither is it far off. It is not in heaven, that thou shouldest say, who shall go up for us to heaven and bring it unto us, that we may hear it and do it. Neither is it beyond the sea, that thou shouldest say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it unto us, that we may hear it and do it. But the word is very nigh unto thee, in thy mouth and in thy heart, that thou mayest do it. Let me explain what was just read from Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 11 through verse number 14. In the simplest of terms, Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 11 through 14 is saying, it's so simple you can't miss it. That's the gist of what this passage is saying. God has given a command to obedience. And he says, I'm going to make this so clear and so plain that you will have no excuse for disobedience. Now let's give the backdrop here so that we could understand what's going on. At this point in the saga of the children of Israel, and it's just that, a saga, because there's always something going on with them, they have what I call the if factor. They're getting ready to go into the promised land, and God, through Moses, is saying, if you do what's right, I'm going to bless you. But if you do what's wrong, you're going to suffer the consequences. That's why I call it the if factor. Moses is not going to be the one to take them into the promised land. His successor, Joshua, is going to lead them. Their future is bright. All they've got to do is what's right. How true is that statement for any of us? The future is bright if we just do what is right. I don't have to tell you how the story goes. They get over there, they get beside themselves, and they find themselves losing blessings and favor from God. How many of us can say that we are guilty of the same reality as Israel? I'm not talking about their end result, I'm talking about the front end, where we knew we had a chance to obey God, and we've had an opportunity to make decisions that we know without a doubt this is right versus wrong. What did you choose? The outcomes will say everything. See, in our lives, we have to decide between temporary pleasure and long-term righteousness. We have to determine, am I trying to please myself or am I trying to please God? Am I trying to please others or am I trying to please God? Am I going to be led by the flesh or am I going to be led by the Spirit? Am I going to be a churchgoer or am I going to be a Christian? In our lives, in order to choose what is right to get right outcomes, we have to see that there are some things that impact us making the right or wrong decision. It could be, what are our intentions? What do you intend to do? That says something about what's in your heart. Because some people don't struggle with right and wrong. They just want to do what's wrong, or others want to do what's right. It's a matter of intentions. The second thing is we have to be careful about who influences us. And over the years of preaching, I've heard people say, Brother Gibbs, I'm my own person. Nobody tells me what to do, and I make my own choices. I'm pretty sure that most, if not all of us, are subjected to influence by someone. That doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but to think that you can't be influenced is not being honest with yourself. And then you have to think about, what are the things you involve yourself in. Sometimes we get in trouble just because we get involved in stuff we shouldn't have been involved in the first place. Here's what happens when we are obedient, because we get to see what's behind door number 1 or door number 2. What happens when we go left or go right. First is we don't have to suffer consequences. God punishes sin because he's just and he's righteous, he's holy. When we are disobedient, we can't have joy when we're suffering the consequences of our disobedience. Second, we get to have a clear conscience with the Lord. If ever there's someone or an entity, a being that you want to be right with, it ought to be the Lord. And then third, we get favor. Favor is one of those things that we don't spend a lot of time talking about. It's not just a blessing, but favor is a special category of blessings, a special area in life in which God just chooses to go above and beyond to be good to us, to be kind to us, to be loving toward us. And though there is a pleasure component to sin, always remember that you cannot ever make a choice for pleasure that can be greater than God's favor. Deny yourself the temporary pleasure of sin and the long-term pleasure of favor. It is so wonderful and so awesome that it doesn't even compare. If you want some joy, you might want to obey God. This has been another installment of A Few Minutes with the Minister.